evening, everyone. This is Tony from her Homestead Skills, and this is the day after our internet blackout. And yes, we are live again. We do have service. And fortunately for Canada, Rogers is not the only service provider, but they are one of the main large ones. They're one of the ones that have the infrastructure in place that some of the other providers do use. I think it's mainly Bell and Rogers in this part of the woods. Out west it might be different. They might have another large provider, but like Bell West, I don't know. I don't know who's out there. But Rogers is one of the main providers, and I was not aware that they looked after the ATMs nationwide. Interesting thing to have learned from this blackout that we had. So I wonder if that will change in the future. So the internet does go down. It's I'm not suggesting that it doesn't, but unfortunately when it goes down for 15 hours and more, it does have repercussions, and especially for those who bundle all their services with one provider, something I don't recommend. And I think a lot of people have learned that if they have bundled in the past, that it probably is not wise to keep doing so in the future. At least if you unbundle, you have some service through a different provider. So our telephones are on a different service than the internet. Unfortunately, where I live, the only internet service provider available is Rogers. And actually, I may be wrong there. We might have Bell Fiber available right now. I'll have to look into that one and see if that is available. Anyway, we're up and running. We have suffered no serious consequences, although I'm sure that some people have. Unfortunately, when that service went down, we also lost, some people lost telephone service. I did not. My telephone is not with Rogers, but those that had telephone with Rogers were down, were unable to send or receive telephone calls, and that could be quite the issue. There are no freestanding telephone machines that you can go to now and put your quarter in and make a call anymore. Those don't exist. They've all been removed. Interesting. So all you can do is borrow somebody else's cell phone, or hopefully you don't need to make that call. Other critical services that were down were 911 calls, I think, were not answered. So hopefully there have not been too many serious repercussions on that one. We'll have to wait and see. Well, I haven't heard anything just yet. The other service that was critically affected were debit transactions. Apparently no debit transactions went through yesterday, so that is an issue for a lot of people. I'm not a big fan of debit transactions. I do them, but I prefer to do credit card transactions and pay for it at the end of the month. But people who like to use debit were definitely affected. I understand that a number of people ended up leaving grocery carts full when they heard that only cash or credit cards were accepted. So they, rather than, they had intended to use debit to pay for their purchases, just left their carts and walked out. So a lot of disruptions, and I'm sure today is going to be a big cleanup day. So what has that taught us? Well, the one thing that I'm personally aware of, and I always have been, is, or two things I guess mainly, always have a little bit of cash on hand, or enough supplies to last you days or weeks. There was a time where I'd only put a small amount of gas in my car. Today, when I go to fill up, I fill up. So I have a tank full, and I should be able to get to wherever I need to go, should there be an issue. And gas is another thing that people couldn't buy in certain cases if they were paying debit. And besides having a little bit of cash on hand, perhaps having enough groceries that can last a few days, a few weeks, a few months, a few years, depending on your thinking and your understanding of where the world is going today. I think everyone knows that I'm a firm believer in preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. And I guess one of the other things I've learned through this is that, yeah, you prep some meals that are ready-to-eat meals. So what if the grid goes down? What if you can't cook? What if you don't have access to water, you don't have access to electricity to cook, or whatever it is, whether it's gas, electricity, whatever means you have to cook. Okay, you can't cover off every eventuality, but you can have some ready-to-eat meals that you can just open up a can, and if you have to find a way to heat it or just eat it cold, it's still ready to eat, and you won't starve. And so things like stews and soups are a good thing to have on hand. Beans, pretty easy to mix up a cold bean salad. I mean, you just open a few jars, mix up those beans together, add a little bit of dressing, and you have a good hearty bean salad that's ready to eat that will alleviate your hunger for a while. So those things are never a bad thing to have on hand. Okay, we know that there's going to be shortages. We've all been informed by the world that there are going to be food shortages, and people are starting to catch on, but a lot of people think it still is not going to affect them. You're a meat eater, well, I eat vegetables and I'm going to be just fine. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Yeah, we know there's going to be beef shortages and chicken shortages and dairy shortages and egg shortages and cheese shortages probably. But what makes you think that there aren't going to be vegetable shortages? Crops are failing as well. Oh, and of course, bread and pastas we're going to be short of flour because of what happened in the Ukraine. And some people have stated that all of this was planned, it's a test run. Me, I'm not so sure. I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt and never attribute to malice that which can be explained by stupidity. And in my mind, I don't think that somebody like a company like Rogers is definitely going to do this intentionally when it's going to hurt their bottom line. For sure, they're going to lose customers over this. There's no doubt about it. And their stock prices are going to fall if they haven't already. So I don't really think that this was a planned venture, but what do I know? I'm not in on the loop. We're also already seeing price increases for your pet food, and I have heard that a lot of people are dropping off their pets because they can no longer afford to feed them. We could also face shortages of toilet paper and paper towels and all kinds of paper goods again. And what's causing all of this? Well, you can't shut countries down for 2 years without it seriously affecting the ebb and flow of goods and services. A lot of people that worked in particular industries have left those industries and will never go back. Okay, the bottom line, I think, is not so much that you won't be able to get food. I think that we in North America will still be able to get food, but I believe that the price will be skyrocketing. The cost of everything will be skyrocketing. And have I learned anything from this internet situation down? Well, of course I have, but it didn't affect me that badly. I think communications was the big thing. I had no need to go out and buy anything. And if I did, I still had a little bit of cash on me, and I could have bought a few grocery items had I needed them. So, no issue there. Okay, so Rogers has yet to provide any information on what caused their shutdown and the failure of their systems for that length of period yesterday. And this puts me in mind of a conversation I had with, I guess, what I would consider an old-timer. He was my mother's generation, not mine. And he was bemoaning the fact that he did not understand technology. and that the world was moving away from him and the world that he knew. And he was one of these types that had old knowledge, planting by the phases of the moon and that sort of mentality that I still don't understand, planting by the phases of the moon, but my mother and both he and my mother did understand that thought and that concept, and other things that he knew, and you know, how to plant a garden, how to look after animals, how to make cold cuts, how to make sausages and prosciutto and all those things. He understood very well, and he knew how to prep for bad times. Okay, so, well, I sat him down and I said, I tried to make him understand that, yes, the skills that he had were invaluable, whereas being able to sit at a keyboard and learn how to use a computer and communicate through a computer and do whatever it is that we do with computers, whether it's accounting, whether, you know, all those neat programs that we have that we can now do on computers, and obviously the communication value. It's not that he couldn't communicate, it's just he had different means of communicating. So the skill set that he had was being lost and was invaluable. And I explained to him that should there be a failure in technology, should these systems go down, and they are extremely vulnerable, his skills are going to be a whole lot more valuable than the skills of the youth that know how to use computers. I don't know if he quite got what I was trying to tell him, but you know, with situations like this, and as I get older, I'm beginning to understand even more fully how much the skills that he had that, you know, I know a few of, but wish I knew more, and that we're losing, are much more valuable than, but I'm a firm believer in both. I don't think learning how to use a computer is a bad thing, but I also know that being able to fall back on old-time skills is extremely valuable as well. Okay. Anyway, this is Tony from her Homestead Skills, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.